Ionescu, true. Jonquel Jones with a tough bust.
Still here, little shoulder shake. Oh, what a shot!
Phoenix with the move down the lane. Cloud into the paint. Reverses it in. The New York Liberty are WNBA champions.
Hey Liberty fans, it's Felicia and François, and welcome back to Liberty FM. The New York Liberty remain undefeated, but these two games against the Golden State Valkyries are two different stories. From a dominant win in Game 1 to a gritty, grinded-out battle in Game 2, the Liberty showed us they can win pretty and they can win ugly. We break down what worked and what still needs a bit of tweaking. François, let's get into it.
Yeah, let's get into it. And we didn't know what to expect against this brand new team of the Golden State Valkyries that has a lot of international players. So it was all brand new for us and for everybody, and we didn't know what to expect. But one thing for sure was that it was going to be an emotional return for Kayla Foran. And, you know, it was so great. I think we saw the images posted by the New York Liberty social media early in that day of the reunion between KT and the team, and it looked like it was an emotional one, but a good one. Happy tears. And, you know, seeing KB, Kennedy Burke, hiding and trying to create the surprise and embracing,
See her bestie.
That just shows how much she meant to that team, the relationship that she built with them. And Stewie said that, you know, we're not winning that title without her.
Yeah.
And even though if you look at the stats from Game 5 against the Minnesota Lynx last year in the final, you look at Kayla Foran's stats, it wasn't nothing like that. It was mind-blowing, but it was her grit, her tenacity.
Her defense.
I think she had 5 fouls in that game, but she was right in their face all throughout that game, and she gave that spark when the Liberty was struggling. That's the kind of player she was, and she was meant to be in New York. And she said that she's not a very emotional person, but you could see the emotion in that game. And the crowd was there to show her love, and she got a ring. She got to embrace the teammates and celebrate with them. So it was, you know, kind of weird because obviously now she's now in a different team. And all throughout that first game, it was very conflicting. When she was scoring, do we clap? Do we boo? When she's at the free throw line, same thing. But it was all love, and it was so good to see KT. A quick word, Felicia, about Kayla Foran and what she meant to us.
I still miss KT.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, she was such a difference maker for the Liberty last year, and I think, you know, when you hear the players talk about Kayla Thornton, she definitely should have been in the conversation for sixth woman of the year. And, you know, she did so well, especially, you know, she was pivotal in Game 5 with her defense, especially on Nafisa Collier. They definitely got into it a little bit, you know, in the paint there in Game 5 of the finals. But I'm just proud. I'm happy that she got her ring. I'm glad that, you know, the team just embraced her. And then when you saw on the big screen them just saying, you know, always a Liberty. Like, she's always going to be a Liberty. She's always going to have a piece of New York with her. You know, it's tough with new teams. You want the WNBA to expand and to grow and get bigger and bigger, but with the new teams coming up, you're going to get players that are taken from you. And I know it was a hard decision for the Liberty to, you know, they couldn't save her. Basically, they had to kind of hold on to. They were limited with how many people they could hold on to, and so we knew that she'd likely be the one taken because she is such a great player, and I know she's going to do great things with Golden State. But, you know, I'm glad she came back, got the ring, but I think after that everybody locked in. And yeah, we're happy for KT, and miss her dearly, but, you know, we're still Libs fans. We got to get back to the game.
Yeah. So, you know, a lot of international players on that Golden State Valkyries, and some international players that have already left a mark. The two French rookies, Carla Late and Jonquel, it seems like they've been in the league for quite some time, and it's only been a few weeks. They had a tremendous game against the Los Angeles Sparks the game prior to that, so I was very curious how they were going to fare against New York. And what we knew as well is that, the Valkyries don't really have any centers. They have forwards, but not really like dominant centers. And they had Tiffany Hayes that was out for that game. Monique Billings, who usually gets a lot of rebounds against us, who was out. Zendelicini was out. That player that tortured us all throughout last season when she was playing with the Lynx. So they were short-handed and not really have any presence in the paint. And I think the Liberty definitely exploited that with Stewie. Stewie scored a lot of points in the paint, and she seemed like to favor a right elbow. She would always go on the right and dominated the paint against the Valkyries. It's been a very interesting season so far for Stewie. Very unassuming, very quiet. But you look at the stats since the start of the season, they've been pretty amazing. She's been scoring a lot of points in a very effective way. It doesn't feel like she's forcing shots. She just let the game comes to her, and she definitely exploited the weaknesses of the Valkyries. What did you make of Stewie in that first matchup against the Valkyries?
She was fantastic. And again, like you said, she has it just feels like she's having a quiet season, but she's not. She's putting up major points, and by the time the game ends, you look up and you're like, man, Stewie got over 20 points. It just didn't feel like she has to take over a game, unlike tonight, which we'll get to. But it just feels like she's just participating because there's so many weapons on the court that everyone's putting in their piece of the work. And so she doesn't have to do as much, and she can get her points. She can get the rebounds. She can do all the little things, and the points are coming to her. She doesn't have to force it. And it's just, she's been great so far. I enjoy watching her and JJ just play together. And I'm hoping that they develop that more with them, just having those two bigs on the court. I think that will really unlock more for the Liberty going down the stretch of the season, because you need both of them. And I know tonight for the second game, we didn't have JJ, but for the first game, I would definitely say that Stewie and JJ really pushes this team forward. And with the contributions of Natasha Cloud, Sabrina, and everyone, I think this team could be even better than last year for sure.
Yeah, but then it's also a blessing and a curse, right? Because when you have so much talent in the team, so many ways to score and punish you, you could also become complacent. And a trend so far in this season is the third quarters of the New York Liberty that have been less than,
desirable.
Yeah. So I think, the Liberty had created a gap fairly quickly in that game, being up by 20. And then all of a sudden, the Valkyries are making a comeback. You mentioned JJ, who didn't play tonight for the second matchup against the Valkyries. We saw during that first half of game one that, she had some pain or discomfort and immediately asked to be subbed out. And we're not too far from the Liberty's bench, so we could see what was happening. I think she got strapped around a knee, and she was also on the bike to keep her muscle warm. But you definitely saw when she came back later in the game that she kind of lost her explosiveness. She was still very effective because she's tall and she's so talented that she could still contribute to the game, and she was a crucial part of that game. But you could tell that physically she wasn't the same. She was a little slower. She got frustrated with the ref as well, got a tech. So you could tell that she was not her usual self, and I was wondering if there was going to be anything more serious. And so, you have JJ that is not 100%. You got the Liberty that getting complacent, and next thing you know, it's a 12-point game. At some point, I think they were down by 12 after being down by almost 30. And there's some greedy, tough players on the Valkyries team. Veronica Byrne, for example, comes to mind. She's every year progressing, and I think that this off season she played in Australia, so that really helped her. And she showed also last year with the Connecticut Suns that she deserved to have a spot, and she's doing wonderfully with the Valkyries as the starting point guards. Jonquel, who's also, super talented. She's, the way she kind of plays reminds me a lot of Jason Tatum. And it's crazy to think that she's a rookie. So she was contributing as well. And then you wonder, like, are the Liberty going to blow this lead? Mm-hmm. But that's the thing. We mentioned the blessing and the curse of having so much talent. But it's a blessing as well. Because the Wizards, Marine Johannès, came to the rescue. In the previous game, Sandy was asked about, Marine and, the passive role that she has had on offense in some of the games, some of the away games. And she definitely said that, we need to draw more plays for Marine. Now, I didn't necessarily feel like, more plays were drawn for her, but you could tell like she had more confidence in the game.
Yeah, for sure.
She was the Marine that we're accustomed to, and she was unstoppable. I mean, she scored 18 points. All the points came from the free-point line, but it's just the way with which she played, like the confidence. She had everything, like one leg free, step back free, crossovers. She did all the arsenal of the Wizard.
I mean, this was this was kind of like night and day from the game they played in Indiana to this first game against the Valkyries, because against Indiana, she seemed a little more passive. She seemed a little bit, all over the place with Indiana. I mean, and then here, she just looks so much more confident and just ready to attack and be aggressive. And she did that on the court. I mean, this is a team, the Liberty, as you said, it can be a blessing and a curse, but I would say a bigger blessing just because you have so many talented players that, and you also have certain players like Stewie, who is one of the greatest of all time. And they will push the team because they want to win. So even when they can get complacent, you have people like Stewie, you have Natasha Cloud, that you have vocal leaders now that are going to push everyone to try to snap out of that and get these wins. And if they have to grind it out, they have to grind it out. The first game against the Valkyries seemed smooth sailing, but like any game, especially sort of playing 2 days apart and playing the same team, people are going to make adjustments. And I think we heard Natasha Cloud speak to that a little bit tonight. And, the Valkyries made the adjustment. The Liberty I don't know that they made much of an adjustment outside of not having JJ, which was huge. And you can tell that was huge in the second game, not having JJ and not having her presence in the paint.
Oh, okay. So you already crossed out game one. That's okay. I mean,
no, it's just that game one, they were very dominant.
I mean,
they had them from beginning to end. When you look at game one and game two, the Valkyries never led. There were no lead changes. They were never tied with the Liberty. In game two, very different scenario.
Yeah.
The lead changes. They had 20 lead changes. They led at a couple points. They didn't have a big lead, but there were times they had like 3 or 4. I think their biggest lead was by 4 points. And 16 times the score was tied. So very different game 1 and 2. And so you could see that the Liberty, they were smooth sailing game 1.
So let's put, that first game, behind us. Mm-hmm. It was an easy win, 95-67. There was a huge gap between the two teams, you could tell. But you knew, when you play almost back-to-back, there was only 1 day of rest between the two games. But it feels like a playoff series when you play the same team, very closely. We knew that it was going to be a totally different game. But I didn't think that we would struggle as much as we did tonight. Now, let's put things into perspective. As you mentioned, Jonquel Jones was out. They say it was a right hamstring.
Right
knee. I think initially it was the knee, and then the Liberty, changed it to a hamstring. But Sandy, when she was asked about JJ's injury, they would try to be cautious because, let's talk about that schedule. I think they were one of the few teams that played the least amount of games in the first week. And then this week, it's like, wow, 4 games in 6 days.
Yep.
So 1 day of rest between the 2 games against the Valkyries. Then back-to-back between tonight and tomorrow. They're playing in D.C. as we record the podcast. And then Sunday playing Connecticut. So very hectic schedule. So I'm pretty sure, and with more games this season, that the Liberty didn't want to take any risks. And same thing for Nyara Sabally. There was some concern about her right knee, but, she went to see the doctor and, they didn't think there was anything worrying. And so they didn't want to take any risks. Sandy said she's hopeful that they could play on Friday against the Washington Mystics. So we'll see. But when you have 2 important players out, that doesn't leave many other options. And on the other hand, the Valkyries had Mo Billings back, Zenda Lassini back. Tiffany Hayes was sort of questionable, but she ended up not playing. So it was a totally different game. The Valkyries put a lot of pressure on defense. Mm-hmm. And I think, having a new lineup, Stewie said after the game that they had a game plan with JJ, obviously, and it was kind of like last minute that she ended up not playing. So they had to kind of figure out on the spot a different game plan. And you could tell, especially in the first half, that it was a little chaotic. The Liberty turned the ball over quite a bit in that game. And the thing that frustrated me, it took 7 or 8 months, which was pretty much the offseason, to not talk about the ref. But we're going to have to talk about the ref after
we really tried to avoid
after like 2 or 3 weeks. We have to talk about the ref. Now, kudos to the Valkyries. They were more aggressive on defense and provoked a lot of offensive fouls. But the discrepancies between the calls, it was never consistent in the way they call fouls. Because on the other hand, you could have argued that the Valkyries at times also had offensive fouls and fouls on moving screens, and the ref didn't say anything. On the other hand, the Liberty, nothing went their way. So that made it for a very frustrating game. And you knew that they had to grind out that win if they wanted to pull it off.
I do, and also kudos to the Liberty for keeping their head. No one got a tech tonight. And I think also because some of these calls you could see where I think there was a call that Kennedy Burke should have had, a clear foul under the basket, and they didn't call it. And she definitely had something to say to the ref. I mean, they all had a gripe pretty much. And, they kept their cool, they kept their heads, and they just, they buckled in and got down to just grinding this win out. But it's easy when refs make these calls and then you see it on the replay because you think okay, maybe there's a little bit of a foul. But there are definitely some plays where players weren't even touched and they were calling fouls. And it's tough because the game is so fast and it's happening. I'm not trying to bail out the refs by any means. They're professionals. It's their job. But they got to do better. You really got to do better at calling some of these games, or just call it fair. If you're going to make these calls on this end, then you should make it on the other end so players know what they're dealing with tonight. And it just didn't feel like... I feel like it kind of went the Liberty's way towards the end because they started pushing and being more aggressive in the paint. I think that's probably where the discrepancy in foul calls, you can look at points in the paint for, the Valkyries. They got 30. The Liberty got 18. The Valkyries was just more aggressive in the paint. They definitely got in there, and the Liberty, they just didn't have a whole lot of answers until the end. I think Stewie and even Tosh Cloud drive into the bucket, and they finally started to get in there. But, that was at the end to get the win, and then you started to see the fouls pile up. And kudos to Stewie. Provoking 16 fouls tonight.
16 fouls, yeah.
That's crazy.
It was funny because at the post-game conference, when someone asked Sandy if she ever seen someone before Stewie drawing 16 fouls, and then Sab, started joking and said SGA for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander of the Oklahoma City Thunder. I thought it was pretty funny. Because that's the kind of debate with the foul merchant thing in the NBA. But yeah, Stewie is so talented. And I was glad because I was like, in the first half, you almost wonder why they're not exploding now. Like Stewie, at the 5, nobody can really defend on her. And, they didn't really use that to their advantage. But in the second half, she was relentless. And, she scored so many points at the free throw line. But it was not like giving fouls. She was just aggressive, and she was trying to find ways to score and make a team win. So Stewie, once again, with a low-key great performance. I kind of like this sort of low-key approach from Stewie.
It feels low-key, but then you realize it's probably not low-key for her on the court, but it's just,
I wish
and you're like, Stewie almost had 30 points tonight.
I wish I could pull like 27 points in a WNBA game in an effortless way. So kudos to Stewie. But one player I want to talk about today, and I don't know if it's the aura of Jackie Chan who was there at the Barclays that helped her to step up a game, but it's Sabrina Ionescu. Sabrina Ionescu does pretty much everything on the court, and whatever she can to make a team win, rebounding, passing, scoring, shooting threes. She's a free-level scorer. Offensive level this season has been kind of up and down. And I really like the fact that in this game, she wasn't going to ask herself too many questions. She was aggressive from the get-go. She had 6 threes in this game. I think it's a record in the regular season. But I like her aggressiveness and the fact that she took care of business right away. That kind of set the tone for the Liberty and really helped them when they were struggling on offense. So I was really happy with that. And, it's hard because when you have so much talent and you also have Natasha Cloud now in the starting lineup, and because they share duties as the point guards, I think, for Sab, it's still time for her to adapt and figure out what's the best role and when to attack and when to be the facilitator. So I was really happy with her performance today. And, what did you make of Sab in this game?
I think she also did great. And to your point, what you were saying about Natasha Cloud and Sab sort of working together, you got to realize we're just a few games into the season, and Natasha Cloud is a brand new member, to this team. So there's still some gelling involved in getting used to the team and the plays and everything. Granted, she looks like she was here last year. She doesn't look like she's brand new to the team at all, which I love. I think it's fantastic to see her just like come in and be that perfect piece for the Liberty. But again, it's early, and I think, her and Sab will work out whatever little kinks may come up. I don't see much of it, but I do see where, now with Natasha Cloud being on the team, I feel like it takes a little bit of the pressure off.
Yeah, definitely.
For Sab. And that's why I think, like, even for both her and Stewie, they started out a little bit quieter because all the attention was pretty much on Natasha Cloud. She came in with such a spark and such a fire that I think everybody just sort of focused in on her. And yeah, with Sab and Stewie, they sort of started out quiet. I would say Sab started out a little bit more quieter, but now she took over in this game. She knew JJ was out, and, it's every man up. Everyone has to step up a little bit more because your 5 is not there. And yeah, for Sab, I think, she'll get going and she'll be the Sab we always know her to be, like last year, the year before. She's just going to get better. And that's the one thing about Sab that I do appreciate is she just keeps getting better year to year. She keeps working on her game. She's constantly trying to improve, and you can see it. It translates onto the court. And, I think that would be such a huge help to the Liberty in making playoffs, potentially being in more finals, and hopefully winning more championships.
Yeah, so, it came down to the wire in this game. And like you mentioned, Sab and Clouds that complement each other, but at the same time still figure things out. But, on the last minute of the game, they drew a play that pretty much, sealed the deal for the Liberty. And it was interesting because after the game, Natasha Cloud said that the play was drawn for Stewie. But she's the one that ended up scoring the basket. And when you look back at the play, you have Sab with the ball, She sort of set a screen for Cloud and give her the ball at the same time. And you see Stewie cutting to the basket. But that kind of drew attentions on the defense on Stewie. And that split second where they kind of figure out, do we switch? Do we stay on Stewie?
Yeah,
that created an open lane for Cloud. And with her speed, it was game over. Venlu cannot keep up with Natasha Cloud. And that kind of gave a decisive lead for the Liberty. And the crowd went nuts again. So that's the beauty of this team. At times they will struggle, but there's so much talent that they always find a way to win.
And also, I just want to give props also to Rebekah Gardner. You
Yeah.
know, she didn't have many points tonight, but her presence on defense, she provided that spark, coming down the stretch. I think Sandy switched up a few things, and there was a lineup where I think it was Rebekah Gardner, Maureen Johannès, Stewie, I think Tosh Cloud, maybe Sabrina. No, Sabrina was on the bench. Either way, that lineup that she had provided that spark. It was Phoebus. Phoebus was on the court. And I actually liked that lineup. They played for each other. And that was the first time we saw them actually cutting to the basket. And they had that nice play with Phoebus
and Maureen, yeah.
And I was like, this is what we need to see more of. And it was such a pretty play. But that, I think, also sparked things for the Liberty. But Rebekah Gardner, her defense, you have to admit, whether she makes a shot or not, on defense, she's going to give it her all. She is relentless. And I think she provided just enough spark to get certain stops that were critical for the Liberty to just eke ahead and push ahead against the Valkyries tonight. So kudos to her too, because I think she's going to play a huge role this year. I know Sandy may not play her as much because obviously she's coming off of, previous injuries, so you don't want to put too much on her.
Yeah.
But she is doing really well with the minutes that she's given, and I think, whether it's points, she's going to contribute, especially defensively.
Yeah, I think that's the craziest part. It's only the tip of the iceberg, really, because I feel like Sandy, like you said, is still building her up because of her injury last year. So I'm, only hopeful and only positive things will come up with Rebekah Gardner. Her work ethic is relentless, so I have no doubt that she will continue to contribute greatly for the Liberty. And then Kennedy Burke as well, continues to shine in that team. She had the starting spot, to replace JJ for tonight, and she did every little things that, the team needed for them to win. I mean, she played multiple positions. She defended on multiple players. Stewie mentioned her that at some point she played the 4 when she's more of a 2 or 3. So once again, great performance. She was effective from the 3-point line, 3 for 4. She's becoming a really a big spark for the Liberty, and I hope that she could continue that way and remain consistent all throughout the season, because there could be an award for her at the end of the season.
Yeah, I think she will. I think it's just getting more reps, and that builds your confidence. The more reps you get, and just being out there with your team, it's going to build your confidence, and she's going to do more. I mean, she's already doing more. And, I think, there's still some things to tweak, but that's fine. It's still early in the season. She's going to be also an X factor for this team. Without, KT, I always knew once the Valkyries got, Kayla Thornton, I was like, well, Kennedy Burke going to have to step up this year. She's going to get those minutes because you're going to need her. She's that sixth woman. And hopefully, by the end of the year, she will be in that conversation if she continues to play well.
Yeah, and Sandy before the game mentioned the fact that she told Kennedy Burke in the offseason that she was going to have a bigger role for this year. But she said that she wasn't just going to give it to her, that she needed to earn it. And she did so far. So really happy for her, and I hope it continues. But now, this week is not over. We saw, after the game that, they had to wrap things up very quickly in the post-game conference because they were traveling tonight to D.C. Because they're playing Friday evening It's crazy. Like back to back when you like travel on the second game of a back to back, that's insane. And Natasha Cloud had something to say about it. But it's not gonna be like when I looked at the schedule at the beginning of the season, I was like, oh snap, like it's a back to back. But that's the mistake. That should be fine. Nope. But the way they've been playing so far this season, that's gonna be far from an easy game. Kike Arief and Sonia Citron, the rookies of the Mystics, have been incredible. Shakira Austin woke up in the last game against the Indiana Fever. Mm-hmm. Brittany Sykes, we know, she's relentless. So I'm expecting a tough game.
And don't forget Aaliyah Edwards.
Aaliyah Edwards that just came back from back injury. So they have a lot of talent and they seem to be well coached. I didn't know what to expect from this new coach, but he seems to have the best from his team. So I'm expecting a tough game, and depending on whether Niara and JJ are there or not, that's definitely going to determine how tough the game is going to be.
You hope one of them will be there, if not both, because that's going to be necessary. DC has quite a few bigs, and they are versatile players as well, and they're going to get points for sure. Especially when you think about Shakira Austin, Kiki, and just how well they're playing, and even if some of the games they've won and lost, it's not like they're getting blown up here. They're fighting. They're in it. So, it's going to be tough, but I think this is a good test for the Liberty to test their grit and their will, and just seeing, and maybe even seeing things they got to tweak, things that, they have to adjust, because that's what you're going to do throughout the season. You'll see how this game goes. Hopefully we get the win, but you're still going to be looking at the game, figuring out where we need to adjust, where we need to tweak, and that's going to be important. But hopefully JJ and or Niara will be back for that game and can contribute. Yeah, and on Sunday, another game at home this time against a more than beatable team, the Connecticut Sun. But I feel the Connecticut Sun is that kind of team that is going to cause problems to the Liberty. I mean, in the preseason, even though it was preseason, they had some weapons that could cause some problems to the Liberty. Marina Mabry, we know that she always does well against the Liberty. Nelson Adota is going to do some damage in the paint, rebounding the ball. Tina Charles, even though she has been underperforming a little bit in this last few games, she also does well in her hometown in Brooklyn against us. So they have some weapons. They've been close in some games and some where they got blown up. So I expect a tough game because there will be fatigue. And that's definitely going to test, the team's character. And you're also looking at a team in Connecticut. They haven't won yet. Yeah. And to me, teams like that are the most dangerous because they haven't won yet. They're hungry. And they're going to give it all they got. And so those are the most dangerous teams. When teams are going like 0-4, 0-5, 0-6, it's like they're tired of losing already. Like this isn't normal. So they have to try to grind out a win. So I think Liberty just need to be on their game, play Liberty basketball, and they might have another win. They may have to grind out. I mean, if it's 7-0, I'll be happy. 6-1, I'll be still happy, but a little frustrated. But I'm definitely looking forward to those two games. So we'll come up with a new podcast episode after those two games. But thank you so much, guys, for listening to our podcast and show us love and support. It's always appreciated, guys. So thank you so much. And as we always say, Felicia, let's go Liberty!